Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to our inaugural Leon's Roar seminar. I want to begin by taking a moment to recognize Leon Kaufman, a scientist, friend, husband, and my dad. In 2010, when I was 5, colon cancer stole his life. Tonight is not only a recognition of his memory, but a celebration of his life. We are here to recognize an unmet need in oncology and unite to correct it. To provide some background, Leon's Roar was founded as a 501c3 in 2017. Driven by a passion to help cancer patients, we have since worked to donate approximately 100 iPads and tablets to kids and adults undergoing cancer treatment, with each one being valued between $60 and $500. Why is it important to give cancer patients devices, though? Isn't modern society addicted to technology enough? One of the amazing things about technology is that it allows for communities across countries, across cities, and across hospital doors to interact. At Leon's Roar, we are taking full advantage of this capability. We are giving cancer patients the tools they can use to reintegrate into society and into the world around them. They can join support groups, find coping skills, receive treatment information to foster better communication with their healthcare teams, communicate with family, join online education groups, and return to a sense of normalcy they would not otherwise have. According to the New York Times, cancer patients have an 85% higher suicide rate than the general population. And with mental health issues on the rise, it is more important now than ever to extend these tools to these people. Everyone here has the power to make a difference, and partaking in educational opportunities like these is a first crucial step. This evening, we will hear from those who have battled the illness, those who are directly caring for cancer patients, and those who are working to improve patients' mental well-being. We thank you for being here and hope you can leave this experience with a new point of view on isolation among patients. I'd like to begin by introducing Mr. Daniel Ruggiero, who has battled colon cancer and witnessed firsthand the effects treatment can have on one's mental well-being.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. I had a chance to meet Sarah last year through a different project with my daughter in Tallahassee. And as I told her then, I'll say it again today, I know your dad would be very proud of you. So my name is Dan Ruggiero. I have two kids that go to North Broward. One is in middle school named Zoe, and I have another daughter named Ella who is in a lower school. So I was asked to come today to talk about my experience with cancer and technology, and I would welcome you, because I guess I am the speaker tonight now, to please ask me questions, because I don't have that much to say on the topic. So I am 41 right now. When I was 39, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer and liver cancer. So it started in my colon and spread to my liver. I had a 2-year battle, and I am now in remission for remission. During that time period, technology played a key role in my life and my family's life. First and foremost, when you're diagnosed with cancer, you ask, why me? You start questioning everything. You start researching everything under the sun. So I can't tell you how many hours I spent researching, looking, seeing all the tests. What does this mean? What does that mean? And then ultimately, as you go through the process, I've had many surgeries. I had 10 rounds of chemo. I've had radiation. I've had it all, pretty much. As you go through those processes and experiences each step of the way, technology makes a big difference, because I want to know, what is my recovery like? What is this good? Is this bad? Am I eating the things I should be eating? And so I was constantly using the internet to learn how to help get through this experience. Another way technology really made a difference with me was the ability to communicate with my family. So during this time period was COVID, and there were major restrictions in hospitals regarding visitors. So there were instances where my family was not allowed to come see me in the hospital, or my wife could come, but my daughters could not because they were not 18. And without FaceTime, they would not be able to see me. I had instances where I had some surgeries where I was in the hospital for over 3 weeks by myself. So at least with the iPad and FaceTime, it allowed me to communicate with friends, families, and get through tough times. But I probably use technology the most just to pass the time. And because I know, I guess I'm really the only major speaker today, I'll take a little longer to go through what an experience would be like so you can see. So everyone in different types of cancer, there's all different treatments. So chemo for one person is different than chemo for someone else. So the experience I'll tell you about is what mine was like. So chemo for me was an all-day event. I would get to the hospital early. I would then have to sit and wait for whoever knows how long until I could get a blood test. Then after the blood test, I had to wait for a while to find out whether I even could have the chemo today. Were my levels good enough? That could take an hour. You're sitting there, you're waiting, you need to pass the time. Just to hop on Netflix or to read or something else really makes a difference. After that, I then get told, okay, finally, you can go back to the room. Well, guess what? Now there has to be a chair. So I could wait 10 minutes, I could wait an hour and a half just for a chair to sit to get chemo. Then, once I finally would get to a chair, of course, I couldn't just get it right away. They have to hook you up. You have to go through multiple things. So I had to get one medication first for an hour. And then after that, I then could get the chemo. And so I will tell you, I was probably at the hospital 4 hours at that point, and I haven't even gotten the medication I really needed. And so you're sitting there, you're playing games, you're reading, you're watching movies, you're trying to talk to people, you're trying to pass the time. It's difficult. And eventually I would get my treatment. I'd be there for 3 hours on my chemo. And then I got to take it home with me, and I had a pump for 3 days attached to me. And then I'd have to go back and get it removed. This was a very long process. Part of what makes it so difficult is there are private rooms. I got my treatment at Cleveland Clinic, so there were times I was by myself in a private room. But there were many times where I would sit in a chair and there were rows of people all getting chemo. And it can get really, really depressing because I was by far the youngest person there. And you're seeing people, and there's people next to you that are getting sick and they're throwing up and they're having difficulties, and you could see they're barely alive, laying there getting treatments. And it's incredibly difficult. So to be able to put on my headphones, to watch a movie, to kind of forget where I was for a few hours, it really makes a difference. So I can tell you for a fact that the technology and having that ability to forget where I was for a few hours, it really made a difference for me. And I'll tell you, this is something my wife will tell you I really haven't spoken about for years. It's very emotional to go through that process, wondering whether you're going to live or not. And I've got 2 young kids, 2 girls, a family, and to have stage 4 is very, very scary. But ultimately, I made it. Like I said, I've been cancer-free for a while now, and even now, having beaten it, I'm still constantly on the internet, looking for ways to get healthy, looking for tips. One of the things that I spend an enormous amount of time with, I suffer from something called chemo brain, which basically it affects your ability to think and remember. And I can't tell you how many hours I spent online researching and trying to find things that might help my memory. and improve and things of that nature. And you play games and you do stuff to try to, I used to do those things with the, moving the colors around in the jars and the marbles and try to find games just to keep you busy and keep the brain working and tried a million different things. And so anyway, you know, technology really has made a difference for me getting through it. I remember when I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, I'm an attorney, and I had a court appearance, and I actually did a court appearance from my hospital bed on Zoom because I couldn't, you know, I was in the hospital, I couldn't leave. And the judge was like, well, we can move it around, and I literally was on Zoom on camera in this federal court, and I'm in a hospital bed, and the judge obviously was very appreciative and everything. But without the technology, without the FaceTime, without the ability to do that, I wouldn't have been able to help that client that I had. So that's kind of a overview of my experience, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions or anyone has.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, I'm not sure what stage it was, but my dad also had colon cancer, I think probably 15 years ago. And he went on he claims that, he says, the doctors didn't really, tell him about it or anything, but he found this thing how stopping eating meat, would help. And so he kept getting polyps reappearing, and they said, for sure, and then he has, most of his colon removed, probably, not even a foot left. And he said, after he went on, he ate, a lot of meat before, and it was hard for him, but after that, he had, he was polyp-free for, 9 years after. Have you ever seen anything about that? Because, for me, that's, I only know from him. Saying, he's, pescatarian now. He started out more strict, and then gradually, he still hasn't eaten, chicken or beef or anything like that in, 9 years.
So that's certainly, diet is one of the things that I looked into. I've been a vegetarian since I was 6, so I never really had a meat issue. But I really tried to figure out, I'm 39 years old, I'm healthy. How the hell did I get cancer? I mean, at this point in my life, luckily I was young enough where I was able to do a genetic testing.
Yeah.
Which ultimately benefits my kids because now my kids qualify. They can have colonoscopies at 20 years old because of my medical history. Ultimately, it's not genetics, it was random. The doctors don't know what caused it. They'll never know. So I think ultimately it could be his environment, it could be food, it really could be anything.
Well, his was genetic. It's called Lynch syndrome, if you know what that is.
I don't.
So it's, Lynch, so his family, his dad, my grandpa died from it. They didn't know, he was the first person to get tested for that to even know what it was at all. Since he was also 37 and he was a college athlete, so he was also one of the most healthiest people. But I just I don't know, he just, they said for sure the next time he went back there was still going to be polyps, and I just, I don't know if there's any, there was a documentary or something you watched about it, something like that.
There's so many different types of cancer, even colorectal, and what causes the different types is so very different. I think ultimately he has a plan to monitor how that care, but the biggest message is probably for you. You should really be going at a young age and getting colonoscopies and getting checked, especially if you know this runs in your family. That's really the biggest message. One thing that I don't understand, but I think it's the AMA, basically they just lowered the age range from 50 to 45 when they recommend getting colonoscopies. And one of the things that drives me crazy is if I waited until I was 45 to have a colonoscopy, I would be dead. So why does it have to be till 45? Why can't it be younger? Yeah, it costs money, that's what insurance is for,
Yeah.
but colon cancer in particular affects so many people. It's one of the worst type of cancers because it spreads to the liver like it did for me. And so it really should be from 30. What's the worst thing that happens? You go in, you get tested, and there's nothing wrong with you. Is that so bad? You know? So that's one of the issues I have, is that the age range where your insurance covers it is still, for me, late, very late. But for you, that's the message I would take away.
Yeah.
It
Is
seems
that
to me that's penny wise and pound foolish as well, because I would think if they would cover the testing and treat people earlier, it would result in net savings over the cost of treating
wouldn't
people
it be
for
easy?
cancer.
Yeah, wouldn't it be easier to remove a polyp when someone is 37 versus wait till it gets colon cancer?
And treat them for stage 4
Yeah,
cancer?
yeah. I will tell you, my medical bills. I calculated it because you get like your yearly. It was a running joke. I think my medical bills for I really got treated over 2 years, but my big year, I think it got up to like $980,000
Jesus
was my medical bills. Luckily, I had insurance.
I've seen $1 million. My dad brought it back to $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, my radiation treatments, I think, were $40,000 a pop for my radiation treatments. I had 10 of them.
That's crazy.
So it would have been much cheaper for the insurance company to let me get a colonoscopy for $3,000 and made sure, and if I had something, remove it at that time.
Mhm.
So that's the thing that blows me away about it. But I would recommend you to just get it early, especially where you know.
He says the same thing, like how you're saying, like, don't, like, the 45 thing he thinks is also so stupid, and screen early,
Yeah.
like, as early as you can.
And the other thing is people tend to be like, well, I'm fine, this will go away. And they don't want to go to a doctor for help. Luckily, I recognized there was a problem and I went to the doctor. But people think I'll get better, this isn't a big deal. What's the worst thing that happens? You go to the doctor and they tell you, you know what, you're okay. That's the worst thing that happens. But there's nothing worse than getting woken up because I had a colonoscopy, that's how I found out. Getting woken up by the doctor and saying, oh, by the way, you have cancer. So there's nothing worse than that. So for me, that was really a shocker.
I have a question. So I actually did an internship at Cleveland Clinic over my last summer, and I got to see their ward where they held cancer patients. And I was just wondering, in your experience, with the Cleveland Clinic specifically, or throughout all the time you had cancer, how did the faculty or nurses, do you feel treated you? In the best way possible, or were they kind of off about it or used to it?
So I could not have asked for better care from Cleveland Clinic, from my doctors to the nurses. Actually, so when you finish your last round of chemo, you go and you ring a bell. And that bell is, to symbolize I finished my chemo. So we did something a little different. I actually brought my family with me to the chemo room. And I cried and I cried. And the reason I brought them with me when I rang the bell was because, these nurses that are there, they're helping people that are dying. And all they do is see death every day. How many people come in, they give them their chemo, they hook them up, and then they find out that this patient died. It's an incredibly depressing and difficult job. So I brought my girls, I brought my wife, and we went in and we rang the bell together. And I thanked them, and I let them know that even though they were just treating me, I wanted them to see my family and how they helped us. And how you might just see the person, but you're helping an entire family behind the person. And so we brought them, it made a difference, and of course they all cried too. But I could not have asked for better care from Cleveland Clinic. I was beyond happy, especially with the nurses. because that is, in the chemo room you're talking about, that is an incredibly difficult job. Like I said, that's not, I know people with COVID in the emergency room, and people were talking about how great the nurses in the emergency room were. I get all that. It's really hard to see death and people that you're spending all this time, and you're not in there 20 minutes. You're in that room hours and hours. And these people get sick and they don't feel well. And they're walking and they fall over, and what these nurses have to do on a daily basis is incredible. And to be honest, in a lot of ways, a lot more difficult than the doctors. My oncologist, who basically is the doctor that determines the medicines that I get for my chemo, amazing. I was really, really happy with her. But she would come in for 30 seconds and say, your tests were good, this is what we're gonna do today, and she would leave. It was the nurses that were there for me when I was sick, and when I needed help. And they remember you. I had got recommended from technology and reading online that you get really dehydrated and sick, and the best thing you can do after chemo, for what I had, was to get an extra IV of fluids. So after the first time I went, they all knew me, and I automatically would get that IV for extra fluids before I left. I never ever had to ask. They got to know you, they got to know what you needed. They really just took the time. And I will tell you, there was one instance where I had asked to not get steroids before my treatment. Basically, it's not like antibiotic steroids, it's different type of medicine so that the chemo is not as bad for you. And I had asked my doctor to reduce it because I was having other issues. And I will tell you, that was the sickest I had ever been. And my wife actually had to drive me. I could barely walk. I really, at that time I got in there, I almost wanted to die. I was really, really sick. I couldn't move. And she got me in there, and there were 4, 5, 6 nurses. They knew me, they got me in 10 seconds. They did everything they needed. They took really, really good care of me. And ultimately, they saved my life. So I was beyond happy with Cleveland Clinic. And one of the things about Cleveland Clinic is, and I would recommend this to anyone, particularly people that are my age and older, when you go to a regular doctor and now you need to go to a specialist, you gotta wait 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. When I woke up from that colonoscopy and they already had me diagnosed as having cancer, Cleveland Clinic already had me scheduled with my colorectal surgeon. They already assigned me I had an oncologist, I had a radiation oncologist who handles the radiation. I had a liver surgeon specialist. I had this whole team that was automatically given to me. And when it comes to technology, there's something called MyChart, which is very common now. All my tests, all my emails, all my everything are through this system, and I can communicate with all my doctors. So I was able, if I have an issue, I need a medication, I needed anything, I could always just go into the system and request to speak with someone. If I needed more of this or anything, I had the ability to use the technology to get in, to get my records, anything that I needed. And so the way that Cleveland Clinic has it set up, when you get your tests, it goes to all the physicians, all the doctors at once. You get a whole team of people, and it's incredibly well organized, and I could not be happier.
And that was one of the things that impressed me most about being there for like 3 weeks, was just the amount of insane technology in the medical field that nobody really knows about because you're not really in the hospital facets that often. But the insane stuff they have in like the OR and for chemotherapy, it's just crazy, and technology is so important when it comes to that type of stuff.
Well, so when I got radiation, I got radiation on my colon and I got radiation on my liver. And what happens is what is radiation? It's this gigantic machine, and they shoot you with a laser. that ultimately targets the cancer cells and kills the good cancer cells, and it also kills the cells around it. And so, what made this machine so incredibly expensive for the procedure, but also what it did, if I moved even a little bit, it could be radiating the wrong part of me. It had to be so precise. So this machine, they created a cast, and I got in this cast and I couldn't move. Well, here's the problem, we're humans, we breathe, right? So what would happen is I'd have to hold my breath, I'd have to do something. The machine detected when I breathed, and it stopped the radiation automatically. Because it was targeting an area, and now I'm breathing, now my stomach's moving, now my liver that it's targeting is now at a different location. So this machine was so sophisticated, it literally would start and stop when I was still and I wasn't breathing, so that way it only could hit that one area. That's how crazy this machine was. So, I mean, that's just one example of the technology that Cleveland Clinic had.
That's awesome.
You said you had colon and liver cancer. How did the chemotherapy vary between the two, if at all?
So, for me, the chemo that I was on actually worked with both. So I needed to have surgery and radiation to remove the tumors, okay? So the chemo's job is to do two things. Number one, it's to kill whatever else is floating around in my body before it gets worse. And the chemo's designed to shrink the tumors. The one in my liver was not in a great location. And the idea was that if they could shrink it, that way they can go in and actually do the surgery and remove it. When it was smaller, it would be easier for them to remove. The one that was in my colon, they needed to shrink it so that way they can remove part of my colon, which I had done. And so the chemo's main job was to also shrink it and stop the spreading. So for me, I happened to be able to have the same exact one that accomplished both. But that doesn't always happen for everyone. It really is very cancer specific. And not everyone reacts to the chemo the same way. I think part of it was my age because I was young. My body took to it very quickly. It was very effective. I could see each month when I would go for an MRI, and they could literally see, hey, it's 8 centimeters now it's down to 6. And in fact, it was the chemo was so good for me. I'll never forget this story. I went in and I was having surgery to remove the tumor on my liver. And I wake up from the procedure afterwards, and the doctor is apologizing to me. Why is he apologizing? He couldn't remove it. Why? Because the chemo was so effective, between one of the treatments, it had shrunk it so much, he couldn't see it. And this wasn't a situation, this doctor was so incredibly thorough. By the way, they gave me something a few days beforehand where any cancer cells would light up under black light. So they're not just going in, cutting out a tumor.
It's like gross drink, isn't it?
Yeah, it lights up like a Christmas tree. They can see the cancer.
Like barium or something?
Yeah.
And so I had that. He's sitting in a room. There's 8 people there. There's tons of doctors in the room. He's looking for it. And this is a conversation he's having with me, and I know he had the same with my wife.
He had 3 different surgeons
Yeah.
looking at him while
This-
he was open.
this doctor
Looking for this,
called
and couldn't find it.
Other surgeons, called the head surgeon of Cleveland Clinic that was on staff. Please come in and look, because I already have this guy open. I can't believe I can't find this. We just saw it on an MRI 2 weeks ago, so we know it's there. During that period, that chemo worked so well that for whatever reason, it shrunk it. So, I mean, and he was apologizing to me. I'm like, this is the best news you could ever have. It was so small, it shrunk so much that, but it had worked that well. Ultimately, it was still there. It was just so small that the radiation ended up getting the rest of it. But for me, it was just that effective. So I was very fortunate. So
Because I know like anabolic steroids, some people are more receptive to it. Could that be the same thing for like chemotherapy, where some people are more receptive than others?
well, yeah, of course, because everyone's body is different. It depends on the type of cancer. It all depends on, you know, your treatments and what you do and how you take care of your body. And so it definitely makes a difference, and not everyone reacts the same way. So I was just fortunate enough that, you know, it took, but it was also something we knew was working because, you know, I constantly got tested. One thing that was great about my insurance company, I never had to fight them about one thing. They kept bringing me in for MRIs and CAT scans, and they were constantly monitoring me. And we could see it shrinking, we could see it working. But the big thing was I attacked it early. It had already metastasized to my liver, that's why I was stage 4, but I didn't wait. As soon as I had symptoms, I immediately went to the doctor. I didn't wait. And it's what saved my life.
During your colonoscopy, like for the first time, I know that how many polyps are in there, like determine whether you have like cancer or not, but like do you know how many that would be, or like what's specifically in like your colon that would like tell the doctor that you had cancer?
So with me, it wasn't a polyp, it was like an 8-inch tumor.
Oh my god.
I have.
It was big enough where they can instantly see that it was cancer by looking at it.
Oh.
Now, I will tell you this, a real medical doctor that is highly experienced will very likely never tell you it's cancer unless they've actually physically biopsied it. What they will do is they will tell you it is highly suspicious of cancer, it has all the signs, but unless we biopsy it, we don't know whether it's cancer or not. So they never ever diagnosed me with you have cancer. It's you have a very high likelihood that this is what you have, and that's how they treated me, and they always did it that way. So in my situation, when they did my colonoscopy, the doctor looked and goes, "This is a tumor. I believe you have cancer, and I'm referring you immediately to our colorectal surgeon." And then they sent me for testing to confirm. They do that by blood, and then they do an MRI and a CAT scan, and they give you something called a contrast, which it shoots through your body, and it identifies cancer cells. So they give it to you, you do an MRI with and without, and they see the difference, so they can see the cancer cells. But typically, they'll never tell you you have cancer. They'll tell you you are highly suspicious of it, and we're gonna treat you as if you do. Now, polyps, they'll often just, my understanding, because I'm not a doctor, hey, I removed a polyp, I'm gonna send it out for testing.
That's what happened with me.
Yeah.
I've had multiple polyps removed. I have to go back every 5 years. They always remove a few. They send them out. They say they're non-cancerous. Eat more vegetables. See
Yeah.
you in 5 years.
Yeah. I had a colonoscopy 3 weeks ago, I had no polyps. Doctor was, you're clear. But even then, when I did have it, it's a tumor, there's nothing I can remove. So we're gonna get you over to the surgeon.
First, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story. You know,
Well, thanks Sarah, because it was
Yeah,
her
thank
idea
you.
to have me.
You know, this is obviously so fresh, and this is something that you've overcome, so congratulations, and I mean,
Thank you.
really. And just sitting here listening to this, 20 years ago I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I was 29 in law school, you know, and same thing, why me, what is this, you know? And I did the surgery and the radiation, and, you know, no one can understand, you know, when it's your health, it's you know, everything stops but, you know, just sitting here and you say how much you think, you know, for the last 20 years, every year I go and I have to go to the MRI with and without a contrast, understand all that. And I'm so grateful to these, I can't do enough, I mean, the presence in this, but, so I just, you know, wanted to share it because I know it's
Well,
like.
thank you, and congratulations to you.
Thank you, I mean, and, you know, thank goodness, and from it all, it actually was right on my acoustic normal, so it's right on my facial and hearing. So he was like, you're gonna lose your facial or your hearing, and I'm like, I'll take the hearing. So I'm completely deaf on my right ear, but you wouldn't know, you know, so, but anyways, I just, with all that, just wanted to say congratulations.
Thank you.
and,
It's very
you know,
easy to make a decision like that when they tell you get a chance to live or not. Like for me, when they cut out part of my colon, I had to have an ileostomy for 4 months, which basically means they had to cut out my intestine, and I had to have a bag for 4 months, and then I was lucky enough to have it reversed. And people were like, how do you deal with that? That sounds so horrible. And I would tell them, I'm alive. I got kids that are gonna see me tomorrow. You're telling me this is the worst I have to deal with? I can deal with it. I remember a few months ago, I had ordered a bunch of cell phones from the store. And for whatever reason, the guy accidentally ordered a green iPhone instead of a white one. So I went in there, I got it in the mail, I came and I brought it in, you know, this is the wrong one. He was apologizing to me to, you know, like crazy. He was nice. I looked at him and I go, listen, man, if this is the worst thing that happens to me today, I'm having a good day. I've been told I got stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
You think giving me the wrong color on a cell phone is gonna ruin my day? You got the wrong person. And he thanked me, you know? So I think ultimately, when you think you're having a bad day, you're really not having a bad day. And the other thing is you also don't know what other people are going through. So like my kids, a lot of people at school didn't know. I mean, the teachers knew, but you don't know whether a friend or someone that, you know, you might be bullying in school or not treating nicely. You may not know what's going on at home with them and what they're dealing with. It's really hard, especially with kids. You know, for me, we had to tell my kids I had cancer. How do you do that? That seems like an impossible task. So my wife and I came up with a really unique way. We had an ice cream party. And you're like, well, why have an ice cream party? Because we had good news and bad news. The bad news is I have cancer, but the good news is the doctors know what's wrong with me and they can make me better. So we're celebrating the fact that I'm gonna be able to get better. And that's how we told our kids. At the end of the day, it's all mental, as you probably know. It's very hard to go to the hospital to know you're gonna be poisoned, and you're gonna have several days of hell to have to deal with. And half of it is also obviously, you know, I'm going through it, but I have my wife, my kids, they're going through it with me and having their own issues to deal with. But at the end of the day, you have to mentally say, okay, what are we gonna do to get better? And I'm prepared for it, and I'm gonna do it. It doesn't matter what it is. So ultimately, if you go in prepared to fight, you have the ability to fight. A lot of it is mental. When I finished all my treatments, when I finished the chemo and everything was great, my wife and kids bought me a shirt that said, "Cancer touched my butt, so I kicked its ass." So you just have to have a mental mindset of you're going to win, and it doesn't matter. So.
I have a question, because I'm sure recently you've done so much research, you know, on cancer, all different cancers, and you hear these things, like with our children, you know, with the electronics, it's right there, it's, you know, right near them, or, you know, what's the fact, I mean, on, you know, that this is something that, so you maybe don't get, or I don't know, is there something you've read that is, you know, proven that, or I don't know, just, you know, just something that we can help the generation, you know? generation or?
The problem is you can't read too much because then it will completely, ruin your day. Like turning on the news is typically just so depressing. So I really focused on, for me, what do I need to do to get better? Once I had the testing done, then I knew my kids that it was not something that could be passed on to them. I really just focused on my health and just trying to be healthy, and I didn't try to do too much because you can find cancer and problems and this in anything nowadays, as you know. But I will say this, 20 years ago, I would have been dead because they wouldn't have done the surgeries they do. They wouldn't have had the things they have now. So all the research, everything that they're doing right now, 20 years from now is going to be even better, even better. So, I consider myself lucky. I also had a great support system. I had a loving wife and kids, and not everybody has that. So I was lucky. Anybody else?
Thank you so much for those incredible words and unique perspective. Wow. Our next speaker tonight is Dr. Juliette Oki, a child life specialist who works with pediatric patients in hospitals. She was unable to attend tonight, but has written a speech for us to share with you.
This is a speech written by a child life specialist, as Sarah just said. Her name is Juliette Oki. So I'm just going to read what she wrote. Hospitalization is hard for everyone. It is a stressful and a traumatic event for all. Some patients have long stays that perpetuate isolation from family, friends, and peers, on top of all the medical experiences they are having. This is when they need the support the most. There is an abundance of research available that describes how coping with illnesses and medical treatment is extremely challenging and stressful for patients and their families. Specifically for children, hospitalization can have a detrimental effect on their development and their psychosocial well-being, their physical health, their emotional wellness, and their mental health. Knowing this information, many hospitals are acknowledging this and creating programs that address these issues and provide patients with resources to mitigate these effects. For example, certified child life specialists are employed to work with children, youths, and their families in order to help reduce fear and stress, promote normalization, promote socialization, and more. They aim to mitigate the negative effects of hospitalization. One important tool that can help with this is tablets. Tablets can be used for many things, from helping to distract patients with play, providing them resources to understand their experiences in the hospital, allowing those who may be isolated to speak with family, and more. Leon's Roar aims to provide low-income cancer patients with tablets so that they can have access to these benefits. Technology has allowed hospitalized patients to stay in contact with their family, friends, and peers. Leon's Roar also emphasizes the power of support groups for cancer patients. They can use these tablets for communication and connection with people who understand their experiences. They can use the tablets for entertainment when they must sit through hours of chemotherapy and other treatments. Providing patients with the tablets has provided many benefits. It can completely impact their well-being in a positive way and help them cope with the challenges of cancer. Thank you. Hi, my name is Marin, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the other groups that Leon's Roar has worked with and what Leon's Roar is doing to collect and donate these tablets. Leon's Roar has worked with North Broward Preparatory School to collect tablets. When this effort was first integrated with the school, my Egobotics robotics team realized that so many tablets remain unused by the school when they can be put to better use by others who need them. To fix this, we worked with the Northborough Tech Department to collect devices the school was no longer using and are now finalizing plans to deliver them to cancer patients. Through Egobotics, we also plan events such as an esports competition where we had middle and high school teams compete in a Super Smash Bros. Tournament to raise funds for tablets. We are currently hosting a Double Good fundraiser selling popcorn to fundraise more. We are currently expanding through FIRST, creating chapters that different teams lead as part of their team outreach. When they join the system, they are assigned a mentor team, and once they are ready, they get to mentor another team. This self-sustaining network is currently in a testing phase with 5 teams, including the Western High School Wildcats, but we will soon expand to teams across Florida and have already given a pitch to about 36 teams at an FTC meet. We believe that this can be a lasting outreach project for many teams and many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you for those beautiful words. Before we close out for the evening, I would like to invite Mr. Fisher to the podium to deliver some closing words. He has supported us through Egobotics since the very beginning and is the reason we are where we are today.
Thank you. Well, I hadn't planned on speaking, so I hadn't prepared anything, but just a couple of thoughts. First of all, thank you, Daniel, for sharing. Really touched me and reminded me that I'm overdue for my own colonoscopy, and I am a father of 4, and I'm going to get my butt on the phone tomorrow morning and make an appointment. So thank you for that. And also, I recalls an experience that I had with a very close friend of mine who, as a single mother at 42 years old, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and unfortunately did not survive her battle, leaving a 16-year-old daughter on her own. And luckily she had very close friends who were able to take her in and continue to care for her. But that cell phone that she had was her lifeline during that period of time. It's how she kept in touch with her daughter. It's how she kept in touch with her friends and her family. We would frequently be on FaceTime at night speaking and talking about things just to keep her mind off of it. So I've seen myself the effect that this has. And then, of course, I cannot thank Sarah enough. Sarah Kaufman has been my president of my Egobotics. She is an incredible person, an incredible student, but more than that, an incredible human being, always looking for a way to help somebody else, whether it be Leon's Roar, whether it be a book she wrote about anxiety that she sent to Mexican immigrants being held on the border while they were stuck in confinement last year. She's always thinking about ways to help other people. The first outreach project she did for us was raising money to start an FTC team for a school that couldn't afford one. So she's always reaching out, and I will make this promise to you as you go on to college that as long as I am at the helm of Egobotics, Leon's Roar will always be one of our lead outreach projects. So, thank you all for coming. We appreciate your support, and I'm going to throw it back to Sarah. No, thank you. You make me look good.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. We would not be able to do it without you. If you are interested in starting a Leon's Roar Club at your school, you can reach out to us at leonsroar.org. Thank you all again for coming. That closes our evening for the night.
Have some more dessert. Yes. For your bed. Oh, and one more thing, I have to say this, Sarah.